Welcome back to day 79 of our chess journey to 1500 ELO on chess.com. Let's just jump on ahead and find an opponent again. So today we have Occam with 1466 ELO from Ukraine. We'll play 1d4 and see what our opponent does. I'm realizing here in my OBS some things have shifted and you might see some of my Chrome extension. Let's see if I can change this a bit. There you go. Now we don't see a white thing at the end there. Now let's have a look here. I'm not quite familiar with the Alban counter gambit. I can't quite remember which capture is best here. If we take here and our opponent's queen takes, I don't quite like that position. How about taking with this pawn, and our opponent can't quite take our c-pawn, I think, because we take their queen and they can't castle. That's the most logical thing here, I think, at least. It's been a while since I've encountered this opening, really, so I'm not entirely sure here. But my intuition here tells me, or rather my intuition tells me it takes with the c-pawn, that's correct, but I can't see the follow-up. Takes, takes, and takes, that would be good, but if we take with the c-pawn and the queen takes, then I don't see a concrete follow-up, I guess. No, I can't quite see it. Maybe knight to f3, but let's play a bit quicker. God, we're in move 3 and we're at 13.5 minutes. They push the pawn. I guess no. We don't quite have this immediately, or I guess we do, and then our opponent defends with either c5 or the bishop. But still, this looks like a logical move. Let's come up. This square will... No, it doesn't get occupied because the knight comes out. Now there is a question here. Do we push our e-pawn? But then if takes and takes, they can take our queen. And we lose castling rights, which is not ideal. So how about a maneuver like this with our knight, targeting the pawn. Alternatively, what I'm looking at here is a3 followed by b4 and potentially b5, but a3 will prevent our opponent from coming up here. Because if we play knight to d2 and their bishop comes down to pin us, yeah, we can still play a3 there actually, so that's not that bad. This blocks us a bit, but I don't think it's the end of the world. Although I do have to have a look at this square. Could we bring our bishop out? If the pawn pushes and we bring the pawn up, they take with the pawn, that breaks the structure. How about we come up, they push, or well, they could actually just block. So instead I think let's bring our knight out and try to occupy this square as I mentioned. We are apparently in the modern line of the Alban counter gambit. This knight comes out. But now I think we might be able to play here. And I don't see how our opponent defends the d pawn once more, because we have 3 pieces and the bishop and the pawn is blocked from defending the pawn. This looks optimistic, so let's go for it. But now they threaten to take this pawn in a creative manner. We can't easily defend it. It seems our opponent here is quite booked up on this Albin counter gambit. I don't quite know the best approach here. Could there be an argument here for bringing our bishop up first? It looks like an annoying move. What about the queen sliding up? Well, then I guess we do get to develop our bishop for free. If they push, then we can take and eliminate this annoying pawn, which I don't mind either. So I think we'll come up with a bishop here and hit our opponent. Honestly, I'm hoping the pawn pushes, although I'm not quite sure as to what to expect. Now I think we can take this bishop, and then we can take this pawn on d4. So if we take here, whichever piece takes, I think we can take this pawn, because if the queen takes, there is one less defender, and we don't have to use this knight. And if the knight takes, then we have 3 attackers, and we can take the pawn, while this pawn here is not under threat anymore. Now the queen takes. This pawn is threatened. I did miss this actually. I thought for some reason here this pawn wouldn't be threatened, but it is. However, if we take here now, is there a check here first of all? Then we come up with a queen, and I think that's okay. It looks okay at least. If the knight takes, we take with the queen. This knight takes here. How about takes? And if the queen takes, we take here. I think we have to take this knight either way, because we can't take here, because this comes with a check on our knight here. So we'll take first here. Whichever piece takes, I guess we'll find out what we do afterwards. So at the end of the line here, we are up a pawn out of the opening, which is not bad at all. And we'll see what else can get done. e3 looks logical to me, defending this pawn and developing our bishop and preparing to castle. We should not move this knight. We need development now. Just want to make sure we don't have any other ideas here, but I don't see any. Okay, so let's go for this. Seems logical enough to me. And then we'll take it from there. If the bishop comes out to g4, we bring our bishop out and threaten a trade. Now the bishop could come out here and hit this, then we move our queen to defend the pawn. This is a check I had forgotten about. Now what happens if we block with the queen? Knight takes. No, they have to take with the queen, because if knight takes, we take their queen. So I think this looks logical, and then we defend our pawns. The bishop could come here. Then we have b3. I don't think our king's positioning is that bad, although it's not ideal. And now we can come up with our... No, we can't quite do that because we have to defend this pawn. Our opponent wants to bring the rook out here to d8, pin our knight, and play c5. At least that's what I'm getting from their move. Could we play b3 here? That's not ideal. Maybe. Hear me out here. King to c3 might be a good move. Our king is defended by our pawns. This knight won't be pinned. This will be defended. I'm contemplating the move. I don't see a way of hitting our king easily. It's going to be safer than on d2 at least. So I think we'll play it. And then we'll take it from here. This always looks scary, bringing the king out like this, but the knight can't hit our king, it's 4 squares away. Our king is on a dark square, the bishop can't hit us, and we're standing behind pawns, so the rooks rather can't do a whole lot. We could see queenside castling here by our opponent. Seems quite likely. And then we'll see what we do in response. If queenside castles, I think I'd like to argue for h3, just tickling the bishop a bit and trying to force it back. Yeah, our opponent does queenside castle. Still 15 minutes on the clock. That's bizarre. The reason I would like to hit this bishop here is because I would like to bring our bishop out, but this d3 square, I don't quite like it. Simply because our opponent could take with a knight, and we would be forced to pin ourselves again, and they will have c5 to take our knight. We can't come here because it's not defended, so let's force the bishop back first, and then we'll see what we do afterwards. The bishop comes all the way back, which I think is a good thing for us. This is what we want to see. Now we can bring our piece out without too much trouble. I don't see a concrete threat by the opponent's bishop, and it blocks their knight as well. Or the rook rather, was what I was going to say. This constricts the opposing knight's movement, defends our pawn, connects our rooks. I don't see why we would not play this move. The knight gets protected. Now do we have bishop to g4? Is it even a good move? It would pin the bishop to the king, but I think it wouldn't help us that much. I'd prefer getting our rooks into the action. This pawn here can't be easily hit, but maybe those pawns can. So I'm leaning towards playing our a rook towards the d file first, and then we'll see what we do from there. I was looking at moving the knight here and hitting this pawn, but what does that accomplish? Not a whole lot. So let's bring this rook out and play logical moves. And then, okay, the knight comes back, so I don't quite see why this move was played. I thought our opponent wanted an outpost. Does f4 work now? Grabbing space and restricting the knight. It looks pretty okay to me. Although honestly, doubling rooks might just be better. Yeah, I think I prefer doubling rooks. The knight does not seem to have any threatening squares, so I don't see where our opponent is going with it. They might want to open up the e-file, but we will go up here and defend our bishop. They come out here. This square is threatened. Does bishop to f3 work? I guess it does. Or we could play f3, but that's going to restrict our bishop a whole lot. Those squares can't be contested. I think bishop to f3 makes the most sense. Although I don't see a better move. As I mentioned f3, but what does our bishop do then? Honestly, it might not be that bad. It allows us to start advancing our pawns on the queen side where we have a majority. And then we can use this pawn to defend other pawn pushes. This bishop will be a bit weak for the time being, but as we push our pawns further, their lines will open up. We'll play a quick doubling move. Now this pawn is hit, but how about just pushing it? Defended by this pawn, which we just pushed, of course. I think I like the idea. I don't see a sack here. No, that doesn't work. If they sack the rook for 2 pawns, they lose a knight as well to get our rook with a fork. So this should be okay, I hope. This bishop is adequately defended. We get this move, but now do we not just have... Oh no, we can't push, but can we take the f-pawn? Then the bishop could come out, but then we could counter with our own bishop. And I don't mind that position. So I think we'll take here. The knight could come out as well, but the bishop does. Let's see what happens if we take with the knight. And if the knight takes, then we take the rooks, I guess. I think we could see a mass simplification here, which I think should favor us. We'll take. The knight takes. So now we could force the rooks off. Which I think will do. I'm looking at the squares for the knight here. But I don't think we have an alternative here. The rooks will move. And now I think we have to centralize our king. Do we have g4 first? If g4... how about f4? Then this is an annoying move. Well, it's not really an annoying move. I guess we come in to f3 with our bishop. So f4, simply to allow our bishop to get some movement and to protect this pawn here so the knight can't jump around and be annoying. It's also going to push our pawn, and eventually we can come in with our king. Our opponent has got 16 minutes. Another quick player. So currently this game is quite even. The main difference is we have a pawn majority on this king side. Maybe we could centralize our king a bit more, taking away the e3 square. If the knight comes to g3, I don't see a strong follow-up. How about g4 followed by f5 and playing for a passed pawn? The knight can't move in. It could go to g3 rather, and then we can bring our bishop up a bit. Then I don't see any strong knight moves as a follow-up. So I think we'll come up here and force the knight back. It goes back there, targeting this pawn. But now I think we have king to d4, coming further up with our king. And this should potentially allow us to accompany our passed pawns. The knight does not have forwards mobility now, and this pawn can't be pushed. Now c4 is prepared, or c5 rather. How about we shut it down with b4? And if a5, I think we have a3. And then we can start playing over here. Now we get this move though. I think we might have c5, takes, and then take on b5. If the knight moves there, or takes on a6 and win a pawn. If the knight moves here, I think we take the knight with the bishop. This looks good to me. We can take. And here, I guess we play for f5. We get a passed pawn. Let's lock this pawn in place. Now our opponent has to move. And this looks like an advantageous position for us. We escort the c-pawn up the board. and we will get a queen promptly. 17.5 minutes. There our opponent resigns. Thanks for the game. Well played to our opponent. Okam from Ukraine. Let's have a look at the game review. We played with 88.6 today, and our opponent played with 80.0. I see we had 5 inaccuracies, and our opponent had some inaccuracies and a couple of mistakes as well. Let's go through this. We had an Albin counter gambit. This was the best move, which I'm happy to have found. This other move. A friend of mine used TTS on Discord. I just closed Discord. Let's have a look at this move. How is it calculated? If we take with the c-pawn, we lose most of our advantage. So luckily we took with the correct pawn. They pushed. This was good. This maneuver was good. The reason I looked so naturally at this kind of maneuver is because in the Bowdler attack, which we have faced a few times, a similar kind of knight maneuver is quite typical. Which is basically what our opponent played, knight to e7 and knight to g6, targeting pawns on this square. This was a mistake though. We should have taken and been as unafraid as humanly possible. And here the computer seems to favor this, which, looking at it in hindsight, I guess it makes some sense to me, because we are up a pawn here at the end of the line and the position has been simplified. Our king being in the center doesn't matter all that much, I think, because our opponent's pieces are undeveloped and we have time to consolidate. We went here, which was going to be punished by bishop check on b4. Luckily, our opponent did not play it, or we would have had to make backwards progress, which is not ideal. We took here. Apparently e3 was better, or takes on c6. But why is this good? This comes with a check. We have to destroy our pawn structure, and then takes here. And I guess this is slightly better. It's not that nice to play with though, because of the messed up structure, but it's going to be mirrored, so our opponent has a bad structure as well. But still, we went like this, pushed now, and here this was great for us. King to c3 was the second best move, which I'm quite happy to have found. f4 was good as well. This idea was good. This was top 3. Apparently b4 or c5. Still, this was all good. Bishop to f3 was better, but this was okay as well. We pushed, and this was good for us. This simplification allowed us to play with our pawn advantage quite easily. And we got better moves off than our opponent, forcing them into an incredibly difficult position. Here, our opponent had to move away, and we got takes on c6. And we just got a queen, And our opponent lost the game with 18 minutes on the clock. Almost, at least. Wow, that's a lot of time. With such strong play, I'm pretty sure we would have faced a much harder battle if they had utilized their time. Anyways, they did play well. Thanks a lot for the game, Okam from Ukraine. Thank you for watching to the end of the video. This has been our game for today, guys, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye bye!